Good morning.
Good morning. We were waiting for the on-air sign, and now we are
longer than normal.
We are live. Good morning. Welcome back to Solasi web chat.
Question time.
Wobble. Question time with two idiots. All right, let's get cracking with it, I suppose. Starting off, we've got some new parts. We're going to, generally try and open this thing up and just show you the new stuff that's come in and kind of, what we've been messing around with. The first one is this week we've had another, very small order.
The smallest order you can imagine in terms of size.
One of the smallest orders we've ever had, but an order from Overdose turn up, in which we got a few parts. Number one being DIB, can't see it because of the light rack.
Slide rack.
Slide rack for Yokomo DIB. Again, usual Overdose quality with this thing.
It looks nice.
Looks nice. Everything is machined very, very well. Obviously, we haven't run it. It's in the packet. We're not running DIBs, but say that I've got one just sat there, but that's another story.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't go straight on in that current configuration.
No, I'm not sure anything goes on that in this current configuration. So, might as well say it while we're waffling. Reverse DIB used in Japan, and I did terribly with. But that was self-inflicted, really. Yeah.
I wonder if you can admit that.
I did. I was bloody awful. So yeah, DIB slide rack in stock. Got those. Other fun stuff from Overdose. More wheels in.
Old wheels,
old wheels,
but
new to us.
All our previous orders, they've not really been readily available. So now they're back in stock with Overdose. They're back in stock with us.
There's mine.
It's quite funny because we used to run those wheels a long time ago, didn't we, Driftworks?
Yeah, I love these wheels. The Overdose wheels. It's the detail in them.
Yeah.
I mean now
and the quality there.
Yeah,
I've never
they're
broken
very sharp machine. I broke one.
Did you?
But that was when we were doing like 1 billion miles an hour. So.
With the breeze blocks.
Yeah, with the breeze blocks at Driftworks. But I really like the detail in them.
Yeah.
And for me, there's some of the MST stuff now is more detailed in terms of the bolts and things like that. But the work stuff is still cool.
That's effectively an exact replica.
Yeah, there's no way you're going to see it on camera, but there is tiny little work in motion logos on them and little work badges and stuff, which is awesome. You're just reminding yourself.
Yeah, I haven't seen these for a while.
That is still cool, yeah.
Definitely. And actually, bizarrely, I've been looking at them in full size lately as well, and I'm more into.
They're going to make a comeback.
I'm pretty sure on that. I didn't realise there's a new version of them since I last looked at them, the Ultimate Edition.
I didn't know that. What's with those?
I think she's got different stickers on. But
sure, it's not like a special lightweight thing because it worked like doing.
No, well, I was looking at the Driftworks site because obviously Driftworks have become Work UK lately. So yeah, it's kind of
congratulations.
Well done. That's a good
job, guys.
Thing. But yeah, I was looking through their various options and dreaming.
Daydreaming. Another one from Overdose. While we're there, before we move away from that. We just got some Deval bits in.
Yeah,
got the gears.
Not many parts.
We haven't got a one-way.
We've had the one-way and things like that. And just, essentially just a few basic spares and a couple of nice upgrades that I needed. But we've got more stuff on the way from them, including the Deval chassis, which got delayed for an odd reason.
An odd reason. But to be fair, they are quite special, and they come in with a plaque of some kind.
Well, the pre-orders are all being. Well, I say all. We have the option to have pre-orders built by the experts at Overdose and set up by the experts at Overdose, and those ones are coming with a commemorative plaque, I guess you'd call it.
Commemorative plaque.
Commemorative.
It sounds very posh.
With the owner's name on, which is quite cool. So yeah, we're hoping to.
Not the owner of Overdose, is
No, the owner of the chassis.
Yeah, because you don't want a plaque that says, "Hi, my name is Ito." That wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Unless your name is Ito.
Unless your name is Ito, then it would make a lot of sense. So yeah, they're coming. I'm quite excited about that. Other bits for other stuff. MST makes sense. We've got a new wide carbon damper stay for the front of the
It's quite funny actually. This is it's been a product that's been released for a while, but unfortunately for some random reason it's been left off all of our orders by mistake for the last. So actually we've had them on order for about 6 months, but they've only just actually arrived with us.
Oopsie.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, we've got those. I put one on.
I haven't, because I haven't run my triple X, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Not that you can really tell from that image, but I don't know. Will you be able to see the difference?
Side by side.
If we do that, bit of shuffling.
That was horrible. Nice.
Straighten the wheels up.
No, maybe. Oh, you can see actually.
Yeah, you can see a bit.
Mine doesn't really. Yeah.
I got more poke.
Yeah,
mine's what's it called? Maxi flush. I've got a maxi flush.
Yeah, the front of your car is completely different to the front of my car. I was going to use the body post as a reference, and then I realised your body post is super wide.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially, you probably can't see, but they're wider with more adjustment on. It looks quite cool actually. It matches the rear a bit better, I think maybe.
I like it because it's got more inward adjustment.
Yeah.
As well, like outwardly, yeah, it's got a couple more holes, but actually, you know, we tend to move our dampers in because obviously, well, it gives you more clearance on lock, you know, before you hit the suspension. But saying that, I'm hitting the suspension now because I'm still arsing around the settings. I apologise profusely. So get rid of that. The other part that's come in is the aluminium adjustable servo horn. There, that's purple.
Why does that look blue?
I don't know.
We need a better cam.
But then, you know, I don't look like I've got a tan on camera. But yeah, we got those in. I've been running one of those this week. It's pretty good.
You're running it quite far to the top.
I am. I've also adjusted my servo. You can't actually see any of that, really, can you? No, it's super dark. But I've adjusted the angle of the tie rod. I suppose would be the correct term for the complete assembly of ball end and link and everything. It's a tie rod. So I've adjusted the angle of that, and actually having, I guess it's kind of like, it's like 1 millimeter adjustment points.
Yeah,
on the,
I mean, I think they just describe it as, they describe it as 1 to 8 positions, but there's just lots of little holes.
It's kind of like a mil at a time, you know, in real terms. But that actual fine adjustment does make a difference to the feel of the steering.
I've fitted one of these on my new RMX, which we'll get to in a minute, but quite unusually, I think if I hadn't have used the adjustable one, I wouldn't have been able to fit it with my combination of servo, battery, and all of these things, because on the RMX, as you'll see in a minute, the servo horn is facing inwards.
Yeah.
And because the spacing on the IMG full metal servo is quite far in, I was running into problems actually catching or rubbing on my battery, which obviously you don't want. Exactly. So luckily the adjustable version has allowed me to get the position. Well,
the other good thing about it is that actually the way it works is that you have a nut, so you can use like a grub screw.
Well, I actually ended up having to use a button head screw.
Yeah.
Instead, and I've effectively reversed it with the 4.8 nut on the other side.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. You can do that because
you haven't got to put into it.
It's a versatile object. So.
And actually, the other thing that's worth mentioning with that is it comes with different strength springs. So actually, you can tweak it for more. Trying to think of a better word. More resistance, effectively, or less, depending on your servo and depending on your setup.
And your skill level, to be honest.
And your skill level, yeah.
Because if you crash a bunch, you want it soft.
Yeah.
And if you don't crash, and you went hard, I guess.
I went for the firmer one for more accuracy, effectively.
I didn't read the instructions and didn't realise.
I figured you hadn't from your reaction. Also, it comes with the shims on there as well, which I've been playing with them, and actually they make it quite a lot smoother, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm quite impressed with it. It's more than just a new servo horn. It's kind of. I don't think it's a direct comparison because I'm testing it on a new chassis, so maybe the steering is just different, but it feels very smooth even when I've just set up the servo.
I just want to coin your phrase. It's more than just a servo horn.
Well, it is.
Anyway, so now we're going to get rid of that. Get rid of that.
We have the loveliness. It's taken
RMX-D.
Which, yeah,
looks blue.
The color is weird, but it is. It's amazing.
It's purple, but that looks. I suppose that is a kind of purple on our screen.
Yeah, it's kind of.
You need to upgrade your screen, dude. Is that our camera?
I think that's our camera, unfortunately.
So anyway,
basically,
this is purple.
I'm blown away with it. It's the RMX-D VIP in purple, and it's phenomenal.
With aluminium arms.
Yeah, I have put a few upgrades on. I didn't want to. It's got aluminium arms, aluminium knuckles. It's got the aluminium body post adjusters. It's got the new adjustable servo horn on there. I've changed the CS straight away to effectively 1.8. What else did I change? I've changed the gearing as well quite a bit, and I think that's about it. Is it? Can't remember. I think that's just about it.
Roughly, yeah, and obviously tweaking dampers and things like that a little bit.
I haven't really done much of that, to be honest. The dampers and everything are in their standard position. They're using the standard springs, using the standard oil. They're using the.
I just meant the spring collars.
They're in the standard position.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
everything's stock.
Everything is 100% standard. Actually, I think I may have tweaked the rear very slightly by about 0.5 mil.
And how is it to drive? Because I've driven it, so I have an impression. But
well, I've been working through trying to learn the chassis, so I'm making changes to the settings that I expect to do something to see if it meets my expectations. And this is the first time I've had a chassis where it's done something different to what I was expecting it to do.
Okay.
It behaves differently when you're tuning it to the others, but in terms of out of the box standard driving, it has incredible rear traction. That's kind of the point of the chassis. The chassis has been designed around the rear motor position. It's effectively reversed, so that the spare gear is on the opposite side to normal. And there's a couple of gears that you probably won't be able to see on camera, but there's a couple of gears just here that change the drive rotation. But effectively what they're doing is every time you accelerate, the motor torque makes the car want to squat. Rather than making it kick up, it squats down and gives you more traction. And actually, literally straight out of the box without changing a single thing, it's one of the best driving cars I've ever known.
It is. I mean, you generally like your chassis very kind of rear endy anyway. Yeah. You like the control from the back, and for me driving it, I found it. I don't know. It's weird. It's almost like it literally feels like driving a mid-engine car, like an MR2 or something. You know, from real terms, drifting. You know. But it feels like that, where when you throw it in and plant it, it's got all the grip in the world, and then when you lift, you know the weight's at the back of it, you know. But it's kind of handy as well, because obviously with RC and the four-wheel drive thing, as you lift, you can get it to rotate the back end on the, off power rather than on the brakes. So on the brakes, it digs in again. So it's like if you imagine it's like grip to loose to grip, from the acceleration to brake, it's very well balanced in terms of what you can actually do with it, because you can vary the point at which you're gripping. So it'll lose grip and regain grip very quickly, which means you can make a lot of tiny little adjustments. And actually, it's really cool because at the minute, with the standard settings, it's reasonably soft, so it looks very dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. Bizarrely, you can. I let quite a lot of people drive it this week on Wednesday on our late night here, and the weird thing that I noticed, because I kind of, when I get a new chassis, I go through a process to try and learn, how does changing this feature, changing this adjustment, make the car behave? Is it the same as the other chassis that I've driven? Is it the same as everything else? And I made a couple of changes that they went the wrong way, and effectively I've undone them already. But I give the chassis to every single person all day, and every single person would take 2 laps before they understood how to drive the car. Not saying like an expert or anything like that, but first lap they'd be a bit like, "Oh, this is odd."
Because the balance is so shifted.
Then the second lap they'd start nailing it and doing amazing transitions, and it'd be awesome. And I knew that the changes I made were bad when it was taking people 4 laps to learn it, or 5 laps to learn it. Yeah, it's quite funny. It's such an easy car to drive, at a medium to or intermediate level, I suppose. I thought it was quite funny. I've never had that before, where you can literally, everyone is learning at exactly the same speed, and they were of differing ability drivers, but it just still took them the same amount of time to understand how to just drive the chassis. People over rotating massively on the first lap, and the second lap just snapping it through brutally.
But that's the thing with this chassis. It's got a lot of forward snapping power, which is very different compared to the other MSTs. I mean, traditionally MSTs are kind of a counter steer chassis.
Yeah.
They're meant to sit on lock and run, with big counter steer. Whereas this, it still has that MST big lock thing, but it's also got a lot of very directional power, which is kind of a new feeling from MST, which is good, because it's that's something that makes you very, very competitive on bigger circuits, especially stuff like the Euros. I mean, that forward snap is going to be pretty unstoppable. yeah, really. That's Tobashi for anyone that's kind of following the whole Japanese thing.
I think one of the bizarre things, or the only comparison I can make to that is the only chassis I've driven that had a similar sort of feel with the rear of the chassis, not in terms of the grip, because the motor torque function on that, but the DIV 275 that I had when I put the silly settings on it and gave it ridiculous caster, and I had my battery mounted as far back as I could.
Yeah,
it would. It
definitely had that
in a similar sort of style, but that took a lot of faffing and wasn't the easiest car to drive.
But the difficulty is now, I've learned a new thing with Tobashi.
Right.
So I've now learned that there's rear Tobashi and there's also front Tobashi. So I think
that's probably a bit more advanced than me.
It is, but well, and me. But this chassis definitely has the rear Tobashi, but the front Tobashi is going to be. It has it. You can it's there, but it's going to be quite fine to set up. But rear Tobashi and rear Korogashi are just natural. Bang, there it's got them. So
I think I definitely need to tune that for a bit more front rear balance as well, because I went the shorty at the back. I think the standard settings are definitely designed for a full size battery.
I think for you, is that something that's kind of more of a tuning trend for yourself? Because I know at the moment when I'm tuning, I'm looking much more at the actual drive balance.
Yeah, definitely.
So like my CS is kind of creeping down, but my counter steer is remaining the same. But I'm finding myself going that way.
I mean, I'm not so fussed about the CS ratio. I tend to, don't know, I've got a bit of a weird belief with it, whereas whatever you've got is what you need to drive. And you can change it to suit certain tracks, but you should be able to drive around any of it. It's the same as for me. If you put a really good rally driver in any rally car, he'll still perform very well with it. It's the same kind of thing. Like you can set the chassis up to suit a particular track a bit better, absolutely. But if you can't drive a car on 2.1 CS or 1.3 CS, then you need to work on your technique before you change the car.
True, but at the same time, there's a well set up car and a badly set up car, and a good driver in either of those will still drive well. But
I'm talking just about the CS on it.
We'll come to that, because that's another subject in a minute. But that's the RMX-D.
I'm very, very, very pleased with it. And so much so that I already want to buy a second one and have a rear wheel drive one. One of them fitted.
That's a rear wheel drive kit. Does that mean you're going to have a purple rear wheel drive and then choose another colour for your four wheel drive?
Don't know. I quite like the purple more than I thought I would, to be honest. So
I do like the purple. I'm jealous.
It could very well be that I have two purple ones.
But then I'm just going to stick with my rad chassis, because at some point, purple won't be cool anymore. This is my theory. I'm probably wrong, because the purple, like I say, you can't see it on camera because our camera sucks.
Yeah.
But the purple.
Have a look on our Facebook page. I posted a couple of photos. I just posted another photo this morning because Ty should ask to see the other side, the wiring, because he's obviously just received his and he wants to
see that side or that side.
This side.
This side.
Yeah. So I posted a photo this morning showing it, which you won't be able to see on there because the contrast is horrible.
Apart from the only thing I didn't wire was the on-off switch. So anyone who's watching,
the reason that
James apologises profusely for that.
Well, unfortunately, it's the shortest version that we have available right now, and I need a 50mm wire. We only have 100, so currently the wire is too long, but it will be sorted as soon as we get stock of the 50mm again.
Indubitably.
And the only other thing that's a bit ghetto on there is the my homemade shorty battery strap.
A toe strap.
A toe strap, because the
But
shorty holder wasn't available when the chassis shipped.
no, but that's what we're saying. The shorty holder is coming for it.
It is.
And
It will be here in a
if
week or
you
two.
need to get one and run it, and you're too desperate to wait for a shorty holder, you can use the toe strap.
Fortunately, Steve Carter's given me a purple one, so at some point I'll swap it over so it doesn't stand out as much as well.
Thanks, Carter.
Thank you. So the rear wheel drive kit basically includes a ball diff. It includes a 20-gram iron weight, which is quite a cool new weight that MST have. It might be easier if I get. I don't know if you can see that at all, but essentially it is an iron column, they actually call it. And it basically that's what they call it. It replaces the front diff effectively. So you put it in place of the one way, so it literally sits a little bit higher than normal. It's not being mounted on the bumper. It's not being mounted anywhere else. It's literally exactly in line with the bearings. It slots into place and.
So are you going to fit one of these obelisks?
I'm probably going to have one of those.
A monolith.
I'm wondering if they. I'm curious as to whether they'll do bigger ones, whether they'll start making them solid, because it's currently a tube effectively that weighs 20 grams. I wonder if they'll do a 40 or 50 gram weight at a later date, so you can add extra weight at that point. Seeing as there seems to be a bit of a trend at the moment for higher centre of gravity for more body roll.
Well, it's also more rotational mass. There's more roll on, which in theory should stop you spinning out because you'll be able to use less throttle.
That doesn't do that. So
yeah, but it's like having a heavy flywheel, isn't it?
No, because it doesn't move.
What? Where's it go?
That replaces the diff. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, in the front?
In the front, yeah. It sits there. So it replaces the front diff.
Oh, okay. Iron column. Heavy monolith.
I thought you'd already know this, but yeah, essentially the rear-wheel drive.
No, it's pretty dumb. I thought it literally went onto the diff.
No, but
that's a good idea too.
That's maybe something we should look at doing ourselves.
Yeah. Don't steal our ideas.
As I'm trying to say, and you keep interrupting me, the rear-wheel drive kit includes a ball diff, includes a new belt and a pulley to change the rear or change the gear ratio of the chassis to suit rear-wheel drive better. It includes one of the 20 gram iron column weights and a couple of sleeves, I think, for the ball diff. I think that's everything that's in there, isn't it? Yeah. But yeah, I'm essentially, with me and this particular chassis, the plan is to have. I'm going to run it four-wheel drive for a couple of weeks just to get used to it, and then I'm going to convert it to rear-wheel drive and use my XXX as my four-wheel drive chassis, and the RMX is my rear-wheel drive chassis until I decide if I'm going to have a second RMX or stick with the XXX. Currently, I'm swaying towards the second RMX, I think, because I like it that much.
Yeah, but you are, or in the beginning, you were pretty much a belt drive guy.
Well, I started with belt drive cars. The XXX is my first shaft drive chassis, and then I had the FXX, and now I've also got the Jet Overdose chassis. But I don't know. I do, to be perfectly honest, I plan to convert the rear of that to shaft drive.
So, as a four-wheel drive, you'd have shaft and belt. Would you?
That's going to be rear-wheel drive and shaft.
Rear-wheel drive and shaft.
Yeah.
So, what are the other options for it?
Well, basically, you can have it as it is there, so it can be belt drive front and rear. You can buy. There's a shaft drive conversion for the rear of the chassis, so you can have rear-wheel drive shaft drive, rear-wheel drive belt drive. You can have four-wheel drive shaft drive rear, belt drive front, or belt drive front and rear.
Didn't you just say the same thing twice?
Probably. Yeah. But there's lots.
But basically, your option is whether it's two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, you can run a belt or a shaft on the rear.
Yes.
That's, as a basic summarization, people that aren't mentally.
I thought I said that, but maybe not. I don't know. Okay. It's a complex thing, but I'm looking forward to that. Essentially, it just adds a couple of gears in and a little plate that I believe just uses a standard XXX gears. So you'll have lots more options in terms of gear ratios as well.
Yeah, that would be interesting because obviously the pulley options for the front.
Yeah.
And the number of options for the different.
We'll get onto it in a minute, but we've seen a few people talking about the CS options for this.
Well, to be fair,
the box, it's you can run 1.3 to 1.8 effectively CS with a couple of like I've put a 10-tooth pulley on.
Well, we might as well go on to that, and it's the new segment. We're going to call it the topic of the week. Don't have to say it like that, but Yeah, basically, from going from the 10-step guide and everything we were talking about last time and the time before, and probably waffled about since the beginning, we figured we might as well actually talk more about it.
Yeah, in a bit more detail.
In a bit more detail, and I don't know, just bash out some theory and see what happens, really. So, from the 10-step guide, we started out with the first thing being final drive ratio, and obviously CS alongside that.
Yeah.
I suppose the thing to do is to start out with CS. Now, interestingly, we have just come off the book face, where we were reading. There was a guy who wanted to run 3.3 CS
on an RMX.
On an RMX specifically. I've forgotten the guy's name. I'll give you a shout out. But the logic with it is that
before we even get to that, firstly, I'll point out it's crazy to think that, because if you haven't driven the chassis, you don't know what CS it needs anyway.
Well, yeah. For a start,
3.3 CS will behave completely different on a long wheelbase chassis. It's front and rear motor will behave very differently.
It's chasing numbers.
Yeah,
that's what I think a lot of that is. And there's, I don't know, there seems to be this thing online where everybody's going, oh, I've got 2.8 CS and I've got 3.4 and I've got 9 point something. Like, who cares? But effectively, CS is just a tuning aid. All it is controlling wheel spin or wheel speed. So basically, I mean, this now, what have you got? You say 1.8?
1.796, I think it is technically.
1.8 would be fine. So effectively, the idea is that when you're on lock, your front wheels are doing one speed and your rear wheels are spinning. Obviously, with this having a one-way, see the one-way working there?
Probably not with my back wheels.
Probably not, no, it's useless. But effectively, because you've got the one-way sort of diffuses the CS to a degree and stops the chassis over-rotating, because you can lift off power and cause the front wheels to freewheel, basically. But if you've got massive CS, if you've got like 4 counter steer, 4.1 or whatever, then effectively what you're doing is removing your ability to adjust the chassis speed and increasing your ability to adjust the rear wheel speed. However, it's a 4-wheel drive chassis. So what you actually need is control over the chassis as a whole, rather than just control over the rear wheels, which is what you're doing. Also, because you've only got a certain amount of actuation on your trigger, it basically means that you've got to be, instead of being able to use 5% increments, to control over the range, so it's like 5%, 5%, 5%, and eventually it adds up to 100%. You have to make adjustments that are 0.5% of adjustment, which means that your control has to be very, very, very fine. I can tell you for myself, my control isn't that fine.
No, I mean,
that's bloody difficult. But high CS does not make you an expert. It doesn't make you a good driver if you can drive a CS.
To be honest,
it means you can deal with
bizarrely
a bit of wheel spin.
I think it's almost universally the best drivers I see never run stupidly high CS.
Well,
because they don't need to. But the thing, I mean, we've experimented with it on my DIV 275. I ran up to 2.8, I think it was, and it was fun because it was different, and the chassis was very different, and the whole thing drove completely different to what I was used to. It's fun for a week, and then it went back to, I think it was 1.8. I can't remember what I ran that on. 1.5 or 1.8, I think, and it was more usable, and actually I was better with the chassis.
Yeah.
I think the chasing CS thing to me is very unusual, because it's almost, if you want to go to, say, for example, 4.0, 4.1, why don't you just go rear wheel drive?
Well, to be fair, that's kind of my point with it, is that once you get above kind of 2.2 at the most, then you're actually like it becomes a hindrance.
Yeah.
You're actually making it difficult for yourself for the sake of being able to say a number.
Well, I think people are doing it because they want less front control. But I achieve that by changing the settings on the chassis. I don't like the front to be doing everything on the chassis. So for me, I changed the geometry of the car to reduce the input.
Well, that's exactly the point I was about to make, is that actually it's the same as changing your tires, or like
there's so many other ways.
We have so many people here that will come down, and I'll drive their car and say, "Your car's fine. Like, your car's absolutely fine. I'll go around. It'll be on counter steer. It'll be snapping. It'll have rear corrugation, front corrugation, blah blah blah." And then I'll give them the car back and say, "Look, you need to go and train your finger.
Yeah.
You need to go and practice effectively." But they don't do that. They go and start tuning, and it's like, well, that you don't need to. That's not the current problem. Current problem is your finger. So it's one of those things where it's like compensating. I mean, if people want to go for crazy high CS, that's do what you want. It's your car.
If it's fun for you,
listen
do
to
it.
us.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not how we would do it. We have done it in the past, but I think what happens is everybody gets into the hobby, and after a while they chase the big CS, and then after a while they realise that's not really essential,
and go backwards.
They turn it down a bit.
To be fair, we kind of did that.
That's what everybody does, it seems. And it's almost like
it's a weird noise.
That's milling machines next door.
I
think it's almost an indicator. I don't mean to sound as rude as it probably will, but I think if you're chasing big CS, it kind of shows me instantly that you're not that experienced.
I mean, that's quite mean.
But it does, because I don't know any of the top drivers that would chase big CS.
Well, I'll put it this way. A while back, I did a printout. We got a Pro. Probably dig one out. We get these things. Video RC for your RC life. So these are made by Kazama, and it's Pro RC DVD, and it's one of the highest level competitions that are out there in DVD format, so you can watch it at home. But I basically looked at this, and I used this particular one as a reference because it was a carpet competition, and most of the guys on there were between 1.2 and 1.5 CS, and these are Japanese professional level. Like, they're all on crazy counter steer. Like, all the technique is ridiculous. They're not like it's not like a few kind of average guys having a bit of a go. All of them are badass, and to me, I sort of watched that and thought, well, how come he's on, like, I mean, there was one guy who was on 1.1 CS, but he was still on like full counter. It's like, how the hell is he doing that? And it literally all boils down to what your finger's doing. And
the setup of the chassis.
Well, what your finger's doing in the setup, it has to match. But don't get over focused with chasing numbers. The other point that I was going to make about that dude was he said, I want 3.3 CS, and you can't get that as standard. Just for reference, nobody does 3.3 CS standard because it's a little bit crazy. But any chassis can, if it's got pulleys, you can make it whatever CS you want, really. If you've got a Dremel in enough time, you can do whatever you want.
In all honesty, in most cases, it's not even that difficult, because a pulley will exist for a chassis somewhere. That's roughly what you want anyway, and you can just then have to find the right size belt, which isn't that hard because you can have tensioners, and it's easy enough. It's just, I don't know, not ideal for me.
So anyway, don't chase numbers. That's bad.
Definitely not.
That's like having a 700 horsepower Toyota Corolla.
Well, no.
Oh wait.
No, that's like saying that's like saying, I've got this new car, I've barely driven it yet. Let's make it 700 horsepower.
But in the real world, I would do that.
No, you wouldn't. You'd drive it and go, okay, it needs to be a bit faster. Let's give it a bit more power. Let's give it a bit more power. Let's give it a bit more power. You wouldn't just go, I want 700, not 600. I want 700.
You forgot. I'm a rare case though, because I'm sort of used to stupid numbers.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Either way, my point's proven.
Yeah. So normal, sensible, non-idiots don't do that sort of thing.
Drive it first.
Drive it first. Right, FDR. What do we know about FDR? Not a lot.
FDR's,
Well, basically, let's explain what we're trying to do, which was going back to the 10-step guide.
Yeah.
The idea is that when you pull away, you know, you've already decided what CS you want to start with. So you've got a base point. So the idea is that as you pull away, your chassis is moving, and your wheels are turning at the same speed as the ground. You're not wheels spinning as you move. So the idea is that from 0% on your throttle, going up to 100%, you start getting wheel spin at 10-15%. You know, like you would in a real car. You know, if anyone out there has driven a car with a turbo, if you move from a standstill and you know you've got the car in gear, you get it moving, and you put your foot flat to the floor, it doesn't spin the wheels right away. It'll move forwards, and then as the boost or whatever cuts in, it'll spin the wheels up. You know, through power or through popping the clutch or whatever it is. So the idea is to replicate that, so that when you're moving, you have initial traction. So obviously, when you're in a drift and you're sliding sideways, if you let off the throttle, your wheels come back to the point where they're gripping again. But it also means that when you're sliding, you can start adding power, which will create directional drive rather than rotational slip. If you put loads of power on, in theory, with a rear-wheel drive car, a four-wheel drive is slightly different, but this is the theory of it, is when you put your foot on the floor, you get more wheel spin, which creates more angle. If you put on a slight bit of throttle, it should, in theory, grip up and straighten out. If you're somewhere in the mid-range, it'll maintain the drift, effectively, because you're feathering the throttle and whatnot. So the idea is that basically you have your FDR set so that you've got that range, so that you're not starting. You don't want your start range to be in that middle point and miss all the bottom end where you need it to straighten out or you need it to grip. You know, as you snap, you want the rear end to grip hard. You need that very low part of the range to be able to do that. So FDR, your FDR should be set up. FDR is final drive ratio for anyone that's new to what we're talking about.
That's that side now.
There's some weird noises happening here today. It's freaking me out. That sounded like a mogwai.
Quite.
It did. It sounded like a mogwai. Don't get it wet after midnight. So anyway, the idea is that you're controlling the wheel speed, final drive setting. So there's no, I mean, as a target number generally you're aiming.
Well, it depends on the chassis. It all depends on the chassis. It depends on the chassis, depends on the track, depends on the surface, depends on the tyres. It's a huge variant, but in here on our track, generally I will aim for around 7.
Yeah.
For a four-wheel drive car, a bit higher for a rear-wheel drive car. What I have just learned is with that chassis, I've gone much lower.
What have you gone to?
I'm currently on 4.7.
4.7 FDR.
Yeah. But I am running a different motor to normal in that. But
different motor, different spur, different pinion,
yeah,
and different CS.
So exactly. There's quite a lot that's different, but also the layout in particular, it seems to be a lot smoother than I was expecting it to be. So yeah, that chassis is a bit of an oddball for me. I probably will change that at some point, but it might just be that I'm learning it and that's fixing problems.
So how did you calculate this? You have some numbers there.
I've done.
I'd like everyone else to see them.
Well, unfortunately, you're probably not going to be able to see this on camera because it's very. I didn't
you
think
just wave a piece of paper. That just proves you wrote
it looks like a blank piece of paper. There we go. There is stuff written on there. Essentially, there are calculations to do. I'll post them up on the blog at some point soon. It's easier than trying to explain them because it can be quite complicated. And you can work
the easiest way to do it is if you go on like iTunes store.
Yeah, there's CS calculators.
The CS calculators, they're an app. Yeah, and you can download those. There's a few of them. I don't know them all, so there's a few of them that have got they're chassis specific. So if there's a lot. If you've got an RMX-D, probably not yet because it's brand new chassis, but. You can go on, you can select a triple XD or a DIB or a drift package, specifically. And a
lot of the time, they've also got the CS options already on there.
Yeah, well, exactly.
So you don't have to count the teeth when you pull it or work out what you've got. It's
But basically, get one of those. Like I say, kind of 7 is the standard recognized.
It depends on the track a lot. I mean,
well,
if you're on a big track, you drop it down
of,
a bit. If you're on a smaller track, you put it up a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
But essentially, another thing you have to consider with your final drive is you have to make sure that you're not overworking your motor in the SC.
Yeah.
It might be fantastic that you're not getting much wheel spin, but if you're cooking everything, it's not going to last very long, and it's not going to work for you. You need to find the balance between the wheel spin and the temperature, and that's actually one of the reasons I dropped the FDR so low on that, was because the wheel speed was controllable, but the ESC was being worked a bit harder than I wanted it to. It was fine, but I don't want it. You know, there's no point in gambling with it when I can just change the FDR and make everything work super cool.
The key to this, I guess, is everybody wants grip and everybody wants to be fast and have control. And FDR, literally, you know, a well-set FDR does all of that. So you can have all the power in the world, and power just makes wheel spin effectively.
Yeah.
A wheel spin doesn't make you fast. So controlling the wheel speed is what actually makes you fast, which is why, you know, in a drift, a Toyota Corolla with 180 horsepower can keep up with an 800 horsepower chaser or something, because it's all about controlling the wheel speed. So bear that in mind when you're doing your setups. It's the same thing with the CS. Just don't chase numbers. You know, you don't need to have all of the power. You don't need to have all of the CS.
You can't set a car up on paper.
No.
You can't go, okay, I want it to have this FDR and this and this and this. One of the interesting things that I'd never encountered before until about a year ago, maybe less than a year ago. I was setting up one of my chassis and just couldn't get it to drive right. Just didn't feel right. Everything wasn't feeling as I wanted it to. And I'm talking in terms of the movement of the car, not in terms of the speed. And Tungsty, I just said, well, what are you running in terms of this and in terms of this? And we went through and we were running very similar settings on similar chassis. And it wasn't until we got to the FDR that I realised his was massively different to mine, because his car felt stable and my car felt twitchy. And it was because the FDR was so different.
Yeah.
That effectively,
you'd remove the control.
I'd moved the control, but I hadn't thought at that point that would have been a factor, because I was running effectively the same gearing as I used on a different chassis.
Yeah.
So I thought it would have been the same, but it obviously wasn't.
It's not. Yeah.
It's completely
exactly.
different. And the gearing you run on that chassis is not what you run on a triple X. The triple X with that gearing would be awful, absolutely awful. But it works for the chassis. It works for the setup. It works for the tires. It works for the track. As soon as you go to a different track, you've got to think about it again. I mean, I don't really change my settings that much because I don't go to too many different tracks. I haven't been to another track since the Euros.
But saying that, because we used to go to a lot of different tracks before we opened this place, because we want to go out and help everyone. Now we're just too busy, which
everyone
kind of
comes
sucks.
to us.
Yeah. But you know, it's one of those things where now, because we run here all the time, our adjustments become finer and finer and finer. You know, so that's kind of good. It's bad that we, you know, it's nice to go to a completely different surface and just start again effectively and learn something new. But also, when you're at the same circuit the whole time, your adjustments can be much smaller. So you've got more time to do, you know, tiny little things and work on, like, you know, winding the spring one turn, and, you know, all you know, sort of get into adjusting the spring quarter turns, you know, and that's when that starts making a difference. Like, oh, you know, that's kind of cool. But everything's like that, though, isn't it? Like, just progression and little adjustments.
Not only that, I mean, the few times we have to change stuff around here is where we have to change it is when we change the track.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very small adjustment between the tracks because the surface isn't changing and things like
Exactly.
that. But actually, we change most of the time when we do change stuff. It's because we want to try something, just to learn something. Which is part of the reason I love getting a new chassis, because you learn everything all over again.
It's
I love that thing.
yeah, it's awesome. So anyway, that is enough of this thing
For now.
because I'm getting jealous of it. To be honest. I want one.
I'm having another one.
Okay, so next segment of this stupidity is going to be question time with us.
I'm going to start with a question from Taj, I think, which is where does the name Solar Sea come from? Which is quite an easy one, because
Jamaica. Where does it come from?
It comes from, it was actually my idea, wasn't it, I think? And it came from a very, or very much a growing feeling that people were just getting into RC drifting to make a bit of money and to try and sell products because they could see it as a booming hobby. And that's just not what we were about at all. We've always been about full-size drifting. We've always been about...
Do it for the love, man.
We do it for the love. It's all from the soul. You know, it is a proper... it is a proper passion of ours, and it's something we, if people would have known us 4 years ago, whatever it was, when we were at Driftworks until 4 a.m. Like
4, 5, 6.
Yeah, basically all evening.
A few all-nighters where you
night.
Stay all night and then just basically start work.
Yeah, and then feel dead for the day and then go home and sleep. But yeah, there's that's the passion that we had for it, and we still have. It's not something that many people. I think because people see us sat behind the counter when we're knackered after a 12-hour shift, it doesn't necessarily come across that we're as passionate as we were, but we definitely are. It's just we're exhausted a lot of the time because we work long hours.
We're sleepy. Does someone want to work for us for free? That'd be nice.
That'd be amazing.
If anyone wants to be a working monkey for free.
I think Tunksy's volunteered a few times.
Yeah.
He's volunteered to be a cameraman, I think, so we'll see.
Yeah, maybe. He can hold the camera still.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's where soul comes from.
Next question is from Jamie Fisher. Hi, Jamie Fisher.
Dick Fisher.
That's
his nickname.
To both of us, what's your favourite or most memorable moment in RC and real drifting? I think for me, I've got, well, if I give one from RC and one from full-size drifting.
That is the question.
He said moments. I was going to give
moment. He said moment. There's no S there.
Oh, okay.
Moment.
Sorry, I've just invented a question in my head. Basically, for me, the full-size drifting, my favourite memory was Awesome Fest. I was lucky to be part of the team that ran Awesome Fest at Mallory Park in 2011. And while it was probably the most intense weekend of my life, it was amazing, absolutely ridiculous. I'll absolutely never forget it. And I'd work for free doing Awesome Fest 2015 if we could, because it was amazing.
Don't say things like that. Someone will make you do that.
Sorry. I worked for lots of money, but yeah, it was it was ace. It was incredible. We got to witness some amazing driving all weekend.
You're welcome.
I was thinking more the Falcon guys, but you know.
Not which Falcon guys, because one of them wasn't impressive at all.
I was thinking more Remo.
Remo was pretty good, and Lars is awesome.
Them two together at night was quite a memory. It was one of the few times I got to go and actually just stand trackside and just watch, and those two firing into, I forget the name of the chicane.
The one at the back.
Yeah, firing into there with. I can't remember who it was. One of the two guys just went straight on at one point, just nearly missed the wall by about this.
I nearly crashed coming into that so bad. You know, the like as it comes down, it's like a big straight, and then literally it just goes left, right, really hard S, and there's like a bit of gravel on the right just before the left. Well, I come in, it was like top end of fourth, flinged it. I'm like this, and it just kept going around. I ended up parked like next to the barrier, like 20 feet away from the track, next to these people like, oh, hi.
My most memorable moment even in RC was probably the Euros this year for sure.
Where you kicked ass.
Well, I did better. I was about to say where I did a lot better than I was expecting. My goal that I'd have been super happy with, and I'd have been super stoked if I achieved, was top 20, because the year before I think I finished 47th or something. And,
well, I didn't achieve your goal. Oh my god!
No.
So you did real good, man.
But I wasn't expecting to do so well, and then when we started the competition effectively, I had a few issues.
I'm going to show the world your moment of glory.
You're going to dust it off first.
I'll do. There you go.
There's. But yeah, it was good fun.
4th place.
It
was amazing.
And yeah, so essentially I wasn't expecting to do very well. I did better than I expected, but I had a lot of fun, and I learned a lot about my car. I learned a lot about myself. It's a bit of a life changer.
I learned a lot about myself. I don't, anyone who was there, if you weren't there, James doing the most amazing thing I've ever seen to calm himself down, which was basically marching.
I wasn't. I was thinking. I wasn't marching.
So imagine that. Like, imagine this is the circuit like that, oh, you can't really see it enough. So yeah, that'll do. So that's the circuit, which was in like that shape, and Jay was basically doing this, like walking. Well, no, marching.
Well, I was pacing up and around here, and then eventually I'd be like, oh, I've got 5 minutes. I'll go and get a beer. So yeah.
So actually, your technique was walk really fast, get your blood going. Have a beer, just be pissed. That's genius.
I was trying to walk a very fine line between relaxing and being drunk. So
that's, I need to start drinking again. It was good.
It worked.
It did. You know? It did. And to be fair, that was.
I think I got a bit lucky with a few decisions, but.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm going to add an extra moment, and actually, that was one of my moments. Objectively, not a moment for me, but a moment for someone else. Was seeing you come forth. I was like, wow, like I'm super stoked for Jay. Like I was kind of pissed off because it should have been me, but at the same time, it's like that's awesome because it goes. It like sort of for me, it went to show that actually all the hard work we put in here and all the practice we do and all the tuning, like pays off because you know it worked.
Yeah, it kind of definitely worked in that case because I may be wrong, but I'm of the opinion that my car was probably the fastest car there, or at least in the top few.
That, but, it was at the point there though. Yeah,
I was surprised at how because I felt like I went to the Euros and I hadn't been driving very much in advance. I hadn't been practicing very much, and I thought I've been a bit busy with the work side of things, and I'm going to struggle. And it was refreshing to know that a couple of days of practice, and it just comes back. It's fine. It's not an issue.
It's like riding a bike.
Yeah, definitely. So, what about your memories?
Mine. Okay, so one was that being stoked for you. I guess RC. Well, I was really lucky that when I was over in Japan, I got to drive with a guy called Marchan, who is one of the pro RC drivers. And at the time, he was doing.
Is he a Tetsuji driver?
No, I think he's just like he's friends with them. He drives for Rolling Park Nagano.
Okay.
And he's amazingly good. And this is like a couple of years ago now. But I remember I was drifting with him, and this is when I was sort of Mizunaga first really started teaching me choreography and everything. And I was drifting with him, and I was twinning with him really well. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I'm finally getting somewhere.
Yeah.
And I stopped to change a battery or do something or whatever, and Mizunaga said, oh, he's like making it so you can follow him. And I was like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, he's basically going really slow, and like when you're going to change direction, he's like changing direction for you. Do you know what I mean? So like he was in the lead, and you could see that I was going to change direction, so he'd quickly zip forward, so I'd end up next to him. And I was like, okay, wow, that's crazy. At first I wasn't really taking it in. So yeah, I was driving around and I started watching what he was doing. And I was like, oh crap, yeah, he is. Like, he's so good that he can twin with me.
Compensate to make
you. He can twin with me back to front and make me good. Yeah, I was like, that's insane. Like, how's he that good? Do you know what I mean? And I said, look, I said to him, do a couple of full speed runs, and just don't wait for me, just go, and he whooped my ass so hard. And I know that sounds stupid because it's not like a moment where, yeah, I won the whole thing and I kicked everyone's butt. Like, I had my ass kicked, and it made me realize how high the level is. And for like any drifting I do, I always want to push higher and push harder and learn more and be better and improve myself. So for me, it was just like, oh man, like the level is so much further than I thought, and I really liked that. So that was super good.
I kind of had a very similar thing this year with Mizunaga, where I had real fun driving with him, absolutely, when he was here. But it was the speed. It wasn't so much about the driving, but more the speed at which he can tune a chassis.
Yeah,
and I was like, crazy. I thought I'm pretty good at setting up a car. A customer gives me their car and says, oh, I've got a problem. I can generally get it sorted within a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But Mizunaga was like, and chassis was better than it'd ever been.
Yeah, instantly.
Yeah.
Like he just picks it up and goes. and goes, there you go. And it's like, oh wow, that's awesome.
Gave me a new level that I need
and
to be able to
he kind of understands how you want your own chassis to feel, which is like super bizarre. Because
that's probably the weirdest thing.
He takes your chassis and makes it what you want it to be, not what he wants it to be. Without knowing you, just from looking at you driving and like just tweaking. Like he doesn't even have to drive the car. He just looks at it and goes, "Oh, you need this," and just does it, and you're like, "What? What?"
That's definitely something I need to aim for. That's for sure.
Know-how. That's what he calls it.
Yeah.
Tuning know-how. So yeah, that's pretty good. The other part of that with full-size drifting, it's probably a bit weird as well, to be fair. But scrapey. But when I lived in Japan, I got to do a lot of actual drifting, I guess, with, and I don't mean going and doing competitions. I mean like going to the docks and going to the mountains and things like that. And I was out on the Toge, which is out on the mountain road, with my buddy Travis Woodham. He's a bro. And yeah, basically, I had a JZX90. It was like 450, 500 horsepower, something like that. And I had a weird moment of realization. And what we used to do is we'd go, it was like downhill. So it was like an S coming downhill, went down a really steep bit, looped back on itself, and it went up and it went uphill to a crest that dipped down like that. And basically, in the middle of the whole thing is like 100-foot drop. You know, like you can see the tops of all the trees, and if you look down with a torch, you can see like wrecked cars down there and stuff like that. So, you know, you can fall down there. But anyway, where it used to come back up and come up like this, there was a big storm drain on this side. Well, they were on both sides, to be fair. But what you used to do is run out, and the paving had changed just before the storm drain. So you try and get your wheel on the paving before you go up the hill. And what everyone used to do was basically, like, if guys were kind of good but not amazing, they'd run out and they'd put the wheel on the storm drain, and then they'd straighten out and they'd drive around the crest. The nutcases would drift all the way and flick and jump over the crest. So there's me with my buddy Travis. I've been drifting for quite a long time, and we went, and Travis was sat with me, and Travis is like really bad. He's ADHD, so he's always hyping you up. Like he's always crazy and go faster, do this, do a jump, da da da. He's like always nuts. So I'm going up this hill, and I'm like, they're like completely flat out in this JZX, like rah! And I flicked it to go over the crest, and I remember thinking, oh crap, I just got this a little bit wrong. Like I just remember thinking it, and as I hit the crest, I jumped, and then as I landed, because it was downhill again, like, and the weight of the car, it just went into this weird sort of four-wheel slide where I wasn't on power, I wasn't off power, I was just sort of in the middle, like just kind of waiting to find out if we were going to go off a cliff or not, really. And it just picked up grip just before we kind of hit the barrier and carried on drifting. And, you know, we pulled it back in, and we did a U-turn and we sat back in the queue. You know, there's like 30 cars, like all drifting together. And I'm, you know, kind of near the front middle-ish. You know, and it took me months to work my way to be able to be that far forwards in the group, you know. And I remember just sitting on that queue and thinking, like, shit, man, like I'm really doing it. This is like all the other stuff I've done, like competitions and magazines and blah 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 and all this other crap was just like didn't matter. It was like, you know, like I'm a drifter and I'm drifting. I'm in the drift world, and that for me is my drift moment. Because although it was like I made a mistake and I was about to crash and die, I didn't, and then it was like, oh man, that's cool. I'm still alive and I'm doing like cool stuff. I survived, and I'm here doing this. So yeah, for me, like being someone who just loves drifting, like that was my moment, because it was like I'm not just a guy looking at drifting from the other side of the world thinking that's cool. It was a moment where it's like, no, I am a drifter. So I was really happy about that.
Yeah, man, that's cool. Next question.
Sorry, I waffled.
Next question from Mitesh. Now that Saul is up and running, What have you got in store for the future, e.g. a different surface? We've got lots of plans in store for the future. It's a bit of a vague question.
What are you doing in the future? Eating?
Different surface is a funny one because we've talked about it, but I don't know, we're kind of a bit torn on it at the moment because a new surface would be fun, but a new surface would probably also be very difficult for beginners. And it's always got to be fun, and so we don't want people to be struggling. You know, if somebody was to literally buy an RTR off the shelf and put it down and have their first go, if they're just spinning and struggling because the surface is super slippy, then they're not going to enjoy it, and they're not going to stick with the hobby, and that's kind of what we need. We've thought about having moving to another unit and having a different, having a second track, and that's amazing, but it's very difficult to afford with the way that business is working.
It's bloody expensive.
Yeah,
that's the reality. And the problem we have as an RC place is circuits are massive, and rent and business rates on places that are massive because they're normally filled with huge factories that make way more money than we do. Then they're super expensive. So for us it's like super difficult. But if we all make RC drifting really popular and we got like 1 billion customers every week, then we can do it.
Yeah.
So the answer is the future depends on you, Meatfish.
Yeah.
Make our future happen for us.
What other questions have we got? Oyvind has asked quite a detailed question about his setup on his MST VIP. It's very difficult for us to answer, but he's basically saying that the car over-rotates, especially at low speed in tight corners. Problems minimal when he uses soft tyres, but when he switches to harder tyres, it becomes a problem. He then goes on to list a few settings. The thing that he hasn't listed is the rear of his car. He's only told us about the front of his car. And from the sound of it, the problem is actually more likely to be the rear of the car, not the front. Over-rotation is generally down to a lack of grip at the rear.
Brings us back to our earlier topic, point 1, FDR. Yeah. So, make sure you're not getting wheel spin for a start, and that's set correctly.
I'm also assuming from the question that the car is set to rear-wheel drive and it hasn't got four-wheel drive conversion on. So it could be a number of things. It could be that the tyres aren't getting enough contact with the ground. It could be that your camber is changing too much on roll. It could be that the ride height, you've got weird rake front to rear or something like that. Yeah. It could be that something's bottoming out at a certain point. It could be that it could even be that your wheels are catching on something on full lock at the front and they're braking effectively, sending the background. There could be a ton of stuff. So without seeing the car, without having a bunch more information,
it could be.
Could just be a bit of practice.
Yeah.
Just had some more.
But if you've got something more specific about the setup for your car, do drop us a message in, and we'll try and answer it as best we can. But we're not fobbing your question off. It's just really difficult for us to give you an exact answer from here when we can't drive it. We've had situations before where people have told us, described the problem to us, but they failed to tell us the one thing that's clearly causing the problem. Like I had it one time where somebody was telling me they were running the MST 30mm progressive springs, and their friend was running the same springs, and there was no problem. And then when both cars got here, one of them had the spring retainers wound right down, and basically it crushed the spring. Unless we see those things, that's generally what the issue is. Bob's asked a full-size question. Hey, Bob.
He's asked, if we were to build a full-scale drift car, what car would you take and why, and which mods would you consider essential? Depends what we're talking about. If we're talking real world that I could probably actually afford, or just the ultimate dream.
The real world is the ultimate dream. You basically buy the car and build the car that you want. It just building it just it's an amount of time, isn't it?
If I could have my ultimate dream car, it'd be an FC, surprisingly.
Yeah.
With a quad rotor. So that's why I'm asking this question, because that's
there you go. That's what you'd build.
That's what I would build. Bob, if you want to give me a huge chunk of cash, that's the car I'll build. And essential mods are the basics, really. A decent diff, decent reliability is a good one for a rotary, and just safety stuff generally for me. Nothing else that's absolutely critical apart from decent suspension.
For me, the bullet goes without saying. For me, I'm not going to say what I could potentially build next, but I've always built my dream car at that time. So I had an S14.5, that was my dream car at the time. Although when I had that, I wanted an S15, and I ended up getting an S15. But then it was like, okay, well, you know, I've had JSX 90, 100, R32, 33, blah, blah, blah. And for me, because I only see a canvas, if you like. So it's like, but yeah, you know, like an S14, a standard S14 sucks so bad. It's such a crap car. But if you only see it as that standard crap car, that's all it'll ever be.
Yeah.
So I always, like, when you say, like, what do you tune? Everything. Like, if you haven't tuned something, or you haven't, like, put attention to any part of that car, I think you've not yet.
You'll have a weak point.
Well, it's not that. Even for me, it's like even putting a stupid little badge on the dash, like that is selecting where you're going to put that and at what angle and what badge it is. That makes a difference to me.
I'm just grateful that there's still a dash.
Yeah, it always helps. But that said, I have had total cars as well.
Whenever I've had not just with drifting, but whenever I've had a cool car, it's always been just a case of keeping it on the road and keeping it running. I've never had the budget to build an amazing car in one hit. It's been like, okay. I
was going to say that anything powerful in rear-wheel drive, it always is a case of trying to keep it on the road, really.
But for example, with the Corolla, I had massive grand plans of putting a 20 valve in it and doing these things. But the reality is I kept breaking stuff and having to repair the bits I've broken, and that just took all my budget. So I've never got to the point where I've got, okay, I'll build a car. Here's my base. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to do.
It depends how bad you want it. If you want it really bad, you'd eat beans on toast for a month. You know, or beans on
way more than that.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. You could eat like pot noodles or crappy, you know, cup ramens, and you know, things
there's
like a meal that cost you 50p. You know,
there's always other reasons. There's always something. Unfortunately,
but this is what I'm saying. It's like a drive thing, isn't it? The people who like have all the crazy cars are the ones that work the hardest for it. No, and not necessarily in financially, but
there's always other reasons.
If you like, when I started drifting, I couldn't afford to pay someone to build my car. I still can't, but I couldn't afford to pay someone, so I started mechanicking on my own cars because I had no money for anyone else to do it. Ideally, I'd go, man, I've got these amazing ideas. Here's a load of money. You make that happen, and I'll come back and go, my ideas are good. But the reality is you know, that's.
Yeah, but it depends. For me, there's always been jobs. There's always been, you know, when I lived in Birmingham, when I worked in Birmingham, I had to constantly drive back and forth to Northampton and things like that, and I couldn't afford a second car. I couldn't afford the insurance because the insurance is ridiculous. And you know, worked 2 jobs, 3 jobs at one point.
Reality bites. But anyway,
it does suck.
We both still want drift cars, and
yeah, if anyone wants to give me a cool car, I'll take it. It's fine. You've got some more questions. I'll let you do that while I do the bottom one while I find some more, because some more have come in, but I'm struggling to find them.
Tristan Packham, with regards to basic MST chassis, what essential upgrades would you recommend to get the best out of the chassis and the best out of your driving? And what way would you say those upgrades need to be set up as? Or how would you set those basic modifications out? Okay, this is easy. Damper set. Turnbuckle set. Turnbuckle set is part number 210372. You can search for that on our shop. Aluminium damper set is 210115, and then our various colors of those. I just happen to pick up red. The dampers will make the biggest difference to your chassis. The difference is unbelievable. Relative to the standard dampers, it will become smoother, more accurate, and easier to drive.
And more than likely faster.
And more than likely a bit faster, and ultimately you'll be able to give yourself a lot more control and a lot more adjustment over things. Same with the turnbuckle set. The turnbuckle set basically adds to the damper set and changes various things that are very complicated, but what it allows you to do is basically set your car exactly the same as it was as it comes out of the box with, you know, non-adjustable arms on a basic chassis, and then make small tweaks from there and tweak one thing at a time. So tweak your front toe, tweak your rear toe, you know, tweak your camber, things like that, and just see where that takes you. But they are the two basic and most effective modifications that you can make to your basic MST chassis, which would be the S version and the RTRs.
And the FXXS.
And the FXXS.
There is a different turnbuckle set, which I can't see right now. There it is.
Yeah.
Which is part number 210, is that 406?
406.
Yeah, which is the FXX turnbuckle set.
You can get those and throw those on as well. But yeah, they're the two best things to do.
I'd say so for sure. That and practice. That's just what you have to
practice.
do. It's just all that matters.
Setup wise, start with standard, tweak for yourself, learn it. I can't really tell you you have to set it up this way or that way or the other. Because I don't know what surface you run on. I've never driven a car. You know, there's so many factors. Put it standard and just try for yourself. Just one thing at a time. Do it slowly. Do it methodically. If something sucks, put it back to normal. If you do something that's really good, leave it on and then try tuning something else and go from there. So that is that question. Thank you for asking, Tristan.
We've had a very similar question, which I'm going to get on in just a second, if I can find it again, because YouTube has a fantastic way of showing me only one comment at a time. So I'm going to have a little dig for it. But essentially, it's a setup problem on a front motor chassis. I know that much. Let me see if I can find it another way.
Is that on the FS?
No, this is on another chassis, which I've forgotten which one it was. Come on, show me all the questions.
Yeah, man.
There we go. Okay, so Francesco's asked, Todd, awesome show as always. It was good. He's running 110% CS on his 16 FM chassis. I'm struggling to put the power down and thus struggling with exit speeds. His current setup he then lists. Any advice as to what I could change to get the exit speeds slightly better? This goes back to similar to Oyvind's question, where we kind of can't tell you because you've not told us a bunch of critical information. We don't know what surface you're running on. We don't know which tyres you're running on. Basically, there's a setup. He's running -4 degrees front camber, 0 degrees rear camber. I'd be surprised if 0 degrees rear camber is a good thing for many tyres, apart from the rounded tyres like a CSR or something like that.
It also depends on the surface, because maybe the tyres are worn flat.
Yeah.
But what could be happening is, if you're on 0 camber, is as you're in a drift, you're because obviously you've got the links of the arms are at different angles or whatever. As you go into a drift, your rear wheels lean, so you're going to be going from 0 to positive camber and negative on the trailing wheel. What you want to do is make it so that you've got negative camber to begin with. So when you are in the drift, you're rolling onto the full contact patch of the tyre instead of rolling off it. So that's
yeah. I mean, he says that he's using hard front springs and super soft rear springs. It could be that there's just too much of a difference between the front and rear. So maybe the rear is super soft and everything's rolling. So on corner exit, everything's loaded up. And
again,
there's just no grip.
FDR. And also with the front motor stuff, we generally ended up with the batteries being quite far back as well, I think, just to kind of balance the weight a bit. Not over the back of the car or mounted behind the no, just in the further.
But just to point that out, we
like there.
Yeah, we very rarely find any good use for a battery behind the diff for me on that car. I've never found a car that needed the battery that far back.
No.
But yeah, it's kind of really hard for us to answer these questions. If you can give us absolute, detailed setups with the surface, ideally even a photo of the track.
I think I was going to say a lot of the tuning that comes out. We were saying with the batteries being behind the rear axle and things. A lot of that tuning comes from your Tabe Arena, and the trouble with your Tabe Arena is it's your Tabe Arena and it's not like anywhere else. It's bizarre, and the tuning there is crazy.
Well, it's so bizarre that there's only Utabe and Tetsujin that use that asphalt.
Well, even Tetsujin is the
track.
exact same asphalt, but it's, you know, Utabe is massive.
But all I mean is the surface isn't like the surface anywhere else.
No, it's specific. It's actually Yokomo asphalt. So a lot of the tuning you see there, you'll see cars with basically no suspension, and they're running camber like this on the back. You know, and you know, they've got batteries mounted at the back and all the weights pushed back and all these things. They're all specific to Utabe. Like the baggy suspension, that is a Utabe thing. I don't know if I've said previously on one of the live chats, like Baggy isn't using baggy suspension at Utabe. He's basically made a crazy roll bar out of a coat hanger, which he's super glued to his
probably changed
lower arms.
By now.
Yeah, he's probably changed it all again by now because he's always changing stuff. But effectively, his car didn't move. And my DIB, I have a DIB to go and do the Yokomo World Championships, and I was, you know, driving my DIB all over the place in Japan with it rear motored, and it was pretty good. You know, I could keep up with everyone, and you know, it had snapping and everything. It was fine. Got to Utabe, and it was just awful. You know what I mean? Because Utabe doesn't make any sense. So be careful. It's an amazing place. Don't get me wrong. I'm not being negative about Utabe. I think it's an amazing place. The best RC facility I've seen, full stop. But
probably
there's millions.
I've never been there, but I can tell it's better than anything else.
Well, you know, some places are on par, you know, but but yeah, I mean, it's an amazing place, but the surface is just Utabe is Utabe, and that's kind of like, you know, in Japan, that's an understood fact. So their tuning, you know, the weight being super far back, and you know, the baggy suspension, all these things. Like, try not to use them too literally because it's, you know, they're so specific to that place.
I've had another quick question based on FDR from Mark. He's basically saying on slippier surfaces, should you use higher or lower FDRs? So concrete versus carpet. Generally, for me, I would run a lower FDR on a slippier surface.
Lower as in
less wheel spin.
As in a higher number.
No, a lower number. I would use, or I'd start there. But I'd start with whatever you've got, and then just try a couple of options, see what feels better.
Yeah, that's the easiest.
So effectively, for me, a higher FDR gives you a bit more response. I think. I'm trying to remember which way around it works now.
I think you're the wrong way around.
Am I?
If you're like, if we're at standard 7 and we go to 8, that should in theory be less wheel spin, should it not? And then if you go, because it's less, it's more revs and less power. Less torque.
Yeah.
Sorry. So yeah, slippery surface is a higher number, and a grippy surface is a lower number.
Yeah.
And then it's also relative to the size of the track.
I've confused myself. Hi, John Fisher.
Hello, John Fisher. Long time no see. I met John initially in Japan.
Did you?
Yep, we went to Taihei Tire, and he bought a Nardi steering wheel. See, don't forget these things. And I even remember the price. I believe it was.
What do you remember that?
Oh, was it 8,000 yen? 7,000 yen? It was like 50, 60 quid. 40 pounds, I think he paid for it. And he was completely over the moon. He was like, wow, this is so cheap. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously, because I lived there at the time, it's just like, yeah, that's just normal, man. And now, I wish I could buy them at that price. Damn.
I think that's kind of... Well, Alex Wilson's also asked.
Hi, Alex Wilson.
We've missed this question off.
I did think that. But,
He's asked, in your opinion, what makes the Key and CSC motor the best combination for RC drifting, and what settings to use for the track? The thing with Kearns or AccuBounce as it's now known is it's the accuracy, the smoothness, the response. Everything is on a different level. For example, there's very few other ESCs out there that at a basic level will update the motor as often as the.
I mean, that's belt drive. I don't know if that equates on camera.
Fresh bearings that aren't worn in as well.
Yeah, full of grease basically, and that's just I mean, what's that, 10.5 in there?
13.5 in there.
13.5, but there's no like go, you know what I mean?
No, there is, but it's the spare opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
You can literally,
compared to other motors that go gang, you know what I mean?
but even just like I say, the resolution on the ESC, updates the motor tens of thousands of times a second. Yeah,
10.5 with clean bearings
on a shaft drive, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. But that's super, just plain smooth.
Yeah. It's not so much about the settings. It's not about the output power. It's not about any of that. It's just how it does it. Everything is super smooth. Everything is super silky. And the fact that you can make tiny adjustments as often as you want is huge. I mean, even the basics of, I hate it when I have to drive a customer's car now where you press brake twice during a corner and you're going into reverse.
Yeah,
that's a really basic thing that once you get used to a key, it's just, that seems like you're driving a tractor or something.
Yeah,
it's just
agricultural.
Yeah,
that's a Julian Smith word.
But essentially, for me, it doesn't prevent you doing anything. That the ESC is capable of whatever you're capable of thinking about doing. It will do it, no problem at all. I'm yet to encounter a problem where I think, oh, that ESC has caused me an issue there, or that ESC hasn't quite worked. Other than any time it's been a setting that I've put on myself that I can take off and change to something else.
I like them also because they look pretty. Like, you can't really see there, but like
you probably still can't see.
No, but that kind of is the point for me. I like that they're a small unit. They're very efficient, very functional. You can separate the wires. Like, you can change the length of the wires, like as a factory option, just by unplugging them. And it means that you can have a very clean looking chassis that hasn't got wires all over the place. And for me, that's a big thing because I can't stand that crap.
I've got the OCD. I'm not so bothered as much as that. I know it's important to some people and I can appreciate it, but for me, it's just got to work fine. That's all that matters, and it's just fine.
It's just got to work fine, but I have to wire it.
Only because you're whingy if it's badly done.
That's true. That is absolutely
second
true.
Part of your question, Alex, what settings do you use for the track? The easiest thing to do is check out our blog, because I posted my settings a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, Vlad.
The only thing I will say, which is something I need to update the blog to say, is the rear-wheel drive settings are incredibly aggressive, and you shouldn't just slap them on and start at that point. You need to build up to them. We had Adam, who comes down here regularly, managed to shatter a reinforced steel piston pinion gear by just putting my settings on and doing a few laps. It completely annihilated a pinion gear, which you'll have seen if you follow our Instagram account. But yeah, just turn it down a bit and build up to it. There were Mizunaga settings, and Mizunaga is an expert, and Mizunaga is
in that case
very refined with his control. So it's a bit different when you're not at the same level. I think, like I've turned them down straight away to use myself. I don't really like those settings. They were the ones that I used for a week, and then I'd say, oh, this is too much. I'll turn it down.
Bit like the Pro RC settings I got from. I met Renato from R31 House, and he put a bunch of settings on mine as well. And my God, they were crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty insane.
Like, it sounds like a little jet fighter, didn't it? That's basically what yours sounded like for a while.
Yeah.
But anywho,
I think that's just about finished. I can't see any new questions. And I think we're on nearly an hour and a half, so.
I know we're getting good at this waffling business, aren't we? We should go in the waffling business instead of in the hobbyist business.
Maybe. We also have a customer here to use the track, so we need to wrap up.
You can wait. You carry on. Thanks, buddy. I'm glad we meet your approval.
But yeah, so I think that's it for this week. As usual, I think if you like it, give us a thumbs up, or if you don't like it,
and favourite. We love you.
Subscribe to us on YouTube if you want to see more videos. We are working on some other videos at the moment, and hopefully we'll get something out in the next week or so. We're just a bit short on time, as always. But,
otherwise, if you're in England, get your butt here tomorrow and drive.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Because that's what this is all about.
Getting good and busy again, now that it's turning up to winter.
Yeah, exactly. Wednesday was, well, the day before yesterday, Wednesday, was chocker. There were a bunch of people here. So that's really good, because it's cold outside and it's warm in here.
Very warm here.
Come here, drive. Otherwise, if you can't, if you're in another country, buy a plane
As you
ticket,
say, book your tickets.
get yourself a G5. Is that what those airplanes are called? Buy a G5, get your butt here. You can land in the street and just come through. So yeah, like and favorite, and see you soon. Ciao.
Bye.